Thanks, Martin. First of all, I would like to thank the ViGo team for having me here, because often I'm a pain in the ass for them. He's laughing, so he knows what I'm talking about. I've been working in the transport industry for over 25 years. During my study, I was driving the LKW. At 18 years old, I got my driver license. And in that time, in Germany, you are allowed to drive a truck from the age of 21. So when I turned up in Germany with a truck, they saying, hey, a kid with a truck. So a bit of a small side step. 4 years ago, I started Trenergy, that's transport and energy. As said, I worked over 25 years in the transport industry, and I was noticing that the complexity around fuels was going up, and especially the pricing of the fuels. So I made the decision to start my own business, and basically it's about helping transport companies for buying the fuels. I got 20 minutes of the ViGo team. That's not that much, but I will try to stick within the 20 minutes. I prepared some topics for you. A small introduction. What's the playing field about sustainability in the transport industry? What are my findings in the past years? What's CO2e? And last but not least, feedstock, because it's very important, feedstocks, because shippers are more and more how do you say it? Normally you don't have any problems to speak, but shippers are more and more demanding on what kind of feedstock is being used. Your guide to become sustainable in a durable way. It's a complex world, and especially sustainability for transport companies is getting more and more complex. And what I'm trying to do is to explain them what are the interests of the fuel suppliers, what's the interest of the shippers, and what's your interest, and combine that together. I have two types of, let's say, products. First of all, it's fuel procurement, especially to show them what are the dynamics in each European country. For example, why is bioLNG in Germany cheaper than in the Netherlands? Because there's a big price differences. Where does it come from? And I'm helping them to make a pathway for their planning about how do they get more sustainable. What kinds of options are there? What's best suiting them? I have 30, 40 clients currently, which I am helping structurally, and they are operating in different fields. City logistics, long haul, construction, agriculture. So I have a good view what's going on in this world. When I'm talking to people and say that I'm working on sustainability within transportation, every time they say, hey, you are on electrical trucks. And then my answer is, that's only a small part of the whole picture. Because as a transport company, you have many ways to reduce the CO2. I always use this sheet. First area is burn less. So how is your driver driving? What kind of equipment are you using? What's the payload? A nice story is that one of my clients, he had to report to a shipper, and they said, we want to reduce the CO2 with 20%. The payload of the trucks was in the Netherlands 37 tons, but in reality, every time they load only 33 tons. So we said to the shipper, maybe it's a good idea to raise the payload because it's available. And then he said, yeah, that's a little bit hard. Then I have to be in contact with my customers. It's not a good idea. But often there are big opportunities already available without big investments. Second one is burn clean. Yeah, then you have two options, biofuels or zero emission. And you could also put e-fuels in this picture, but it's not available yet for the industry. And compensation, yeah, insetting, offsetting of CO2 emissions. So that's the first picture I show, but I am focusing on this one and that one. Now, what kind of choices do you have as a transport company? These are energy sources. They can be fossil or renewable. And I highlighted the ones which are currently available for transport companies. And there was a short discussion about hydrogen. For the coming future, the 5 years, I think that hydrogen for the transport industry will not be a part of the solution because the availability of green hydrogen is very, very low. So what kind of decisions do you have to make? What do you have to take into account to make the right decision? And what's important is you have 4 different drivers to become more sustainable. The first one is, I think it's clear, but there are not that many transport companies or shippers. They said, we want to go green and it doesn't matter what it costs. Yes, there are some, but not that many. The second one is regulation. At the moment, there is a zero emission zone in place, and you are not allowed to enter this zone unless you have a zero emission truck. Yeah, you need to invest in that kind of trucks. Now, customer demand, CSRD, is an important one. And what I also often encounter is that shareholders, stakeholders are saying, hey, we have to go green. And last but not least, the cost. The TCO of a truck which is running on renewables will become more and more competitive compared to the fossil trucks. And what I have seen in the market is that the past 2 to 3 years, often this was the driver, but that is more or less vanishing away, and now all eyes are on costs. That's my observation, and what do you see in the field? Jan is necking.
We are used to that in transport for many, many years, to focus on cost. So
Yeah.
it's not changing.
Do you have other insight maybe or not?
Well, some customers do demand CO2 reduction. It's not vanished for us.
But are they all willing to pay for that or not?
Yeah. We have to talk about that.
Yeah, that's often often customers of me asking, hey, please go with me to the shipper. And then I always say, I only go with you to the ship if the logistical guy is on the table, the sustainability guy is on the table, and procurement is on the table. Because otherwise it will not be successful. And I'm willing to spend all the time in it, but it's not effective. So you have to have all those 3 departments on the table if you are discussing sustainability options. Yes, CO2E. This is only 3 years ago. When you fueled your trucks with HVO, you get this kind of certificate from your supplier. And it only says you have refueled 100,000 liters of HVO, and you saved, in this example, 72 tons of CO2. But this is not the way it's working anymore. Nowadays, certificates look like this. And you see a field with greenhouse gas values. You see a field of what's the amount of bioLNG being used. And you see a field about what kind of feedstock is being used to produce these fuels. And the CO2 equivalent is not only about carbon dioxide, but also methane is taken into account, and nitrous oxide. So it's not only about carbon dioxide, but it's about more greenhouse gases that are being taken into account. And the CO2e footprint of a fuel is being measured in gram CO2 equivalent per megajoule. That's important, but it will come later into the presentation. Often, I notice that people are not aware about the differences between well-to-wheel and tank-to-wheel. Who is not aware of the difference? Because then I can skip this presentation, but also by the previous speaker, we have to have a look at well-to-wheel emissions. And what I did here is I put the tank-to-wheel emissions of diesel, HVO, LNG and bioLNG, and of gray hydrogen, green hydrogen, and green electricity and gray electricity. Then you see that the left side is the bad ones. But if you put the well-to-wheel emissions graphs to each other, then you see that HVO and bioLNG is much more better than, for example, green hydrogen or gray electricity. And what you see is that Vecto and Rotax is focusing on tank-to-wheel, but CSRD and the RED directive, I think we have a speaker who's going to tell more about RED, are focusing on well-to-wheel. So if a shipper needs a CO2 certificate of you, it's always about well-to-wheel. Then feedstock. Feedstock is the raw materials being used to produce the biofuels. And why is it so important? It determines the CO2 footprint of a fuel, the cost structure, so what is the end price of a biofuel. It determines the availability and the supply security. And last but not least, the acceptance of the shipper of the feedstock being used. Because you have different categories of feedstock. I always try to make it simple, because if you deep dive into all regulations, yeah, it's much more. But I always make the plant-based biofuels of a feedstock and the animal organic waste side. And we all started with first generation. Yesterday we had a conversation, Martin, and we were talking about raps. That was more or less a first generation of biofuel. But there is a problem with that category, and that endangers, so for example, what happens in Brazil or in Indonesia. They put forest down, they put palm on it, and then it's being sold as fuel. But that's not the right way to go. So also in Europe, this kind of feedstock is being banned. Nowadays, we are making use of the second generation of feedstock. For plant-based, it's, for example, straw, corn stove, or wood chips. And mainly out of this, for example, ethanol is being produced. And on the right-hand side, you have animal fats, fish oil, manure. Manure is actually the biggest feedstock for bioenergy nowadays. I'm right or not, Martin? And used cooking oil. So this side is more or less HVO and bioLNG. Yeah, and the third generation, a lot of development is going on, but it's not available yet. So currently, we are making use of the second generation biofuels.
By the way, the complete LNG which you can fill on our stations, the bioenergy, is 100% produced from manure. So our LNG is in the category B. It's only manure. 100%.
And what I noticed in the market is that shippers are more and more asking, hey, what kind of feedstock is being used? Because some of these, for example, used cooking oil, could also be palm oil, which is being used to fry some fries, and then it's used cooking oil. And especially from the Asia area, currently there are some investigations to have a look, is it really used cooking oil? But if you have a look, where are the feedstock coming from? This is for the Netherlands, for 24, and you see that most of it is coming out of Asia, a little bit in Europe, and some are from the States. So the main source for the feedstock being used, this was the Netherlands 24, is Asia. Any questions, remarks?
I have a question. Is it now still legal to use the first generation fuels if there isn't enough of the second generation? I read something that it's a factor 1 or 2, and well, we're supposed to use the second generation, but it's still possible to mix in the palm oil if there's not enough of the second generation.
It's still possible, but I don't know if who's talking about the red directive. She is. I will keep it short, then you can explain more in your presentation. Within red, you are not allowed to use because the fuel suppliers, there has to be a certain amount of renewable energies within the fuels they are selling. And if you are making use of fuels made out of the first generation, then it doesn't count. So there is no incentive for them to make use of it.
No incentive, but it's still legal.
Yeah, legal, then I'm looking to you.
It's perfectly allowed, it's within limits, and usually in some countries it might be banned, like for example in France, or they could require additional certification on top of the usual one to demonstrate that indeed it doesn't originate from deforestation. But for example, palm doesn't really make the European market at the moment that much, but for example we rely a lot on rapeseed based biofuels, which are also first generation. And that would not change. We have the rapeseed, and yeah, we are not cutting trees to grow rapeseed. So it's still there, and quality-wise, it's very effective for the diesel blending. So crops are here to stay, but they are limited.
Yeah. I made a comparison between HVO and bioLNG. What kind of feedstock is being used? Now then you see at HVO it's used cooking oil, palm and tallow. And bio-CNG, LNG, it's mainly straw and manure. The origin for HVO, the supply is coming from all of the world. And bioLNG is for, I would say, 99% coming out of Europe, including Ukraine and so on. But it's within the region. The carbon intensity of HVO, it's approximately compared to fossil diesel, which is, the value is 94 grams per megajoule. You see it also on the certificate. It's about 85% saving. And with bio-CNG, LNG, you are up to 200% of savings. And that's mainly coming out of the methane, which is being catched within the
fermentation process.
Exactly, thank you. So yes, I am here speaking on the ViGo Lounge, but if you look at the characteristics of HVO and bioLNG, I think with bioLNG you have more secureness that not the wrong feedstock is being used. And that's what shippers are more and more demanding. Because I have also customer, then the shipper is coming, said, you are making use of HVO, for me it's fine, but I don't want polymer in it from Asia. So there are becoming more and more restrictions on that. These are the key insights from my presentation. So yeah, decarbonation goes beyond electrification alone. Yeah, the shipper incentive is key, what the best option is. So always also ask for that. Yeah, CO2e equivalent we spoke about. Now, there is a big gap between well-to-wheel and tank-to-wheel emissions, but keep in mind for the CSRD reporting, well-to-wheel is being measured. Yeah, the feedstock type and origin, they shape the savings of the CO2, the cost, supply and acceptance. Yeah, not all feedstocks are allowed. Some are risky, tricky. Yeah, and shippers are increasingly critical on feedstock use. Yeah, and bioLNG offers strong advantages compared to HVO in this perspective.